This is Phyllis Knight. At the time of the article I read about her in 2014, she was 94 years old and spent most of her life in the Pentecostal movement in England. She tells some cool stories and a little bit about Smith Wigglesworth, but one thing I noticed when she was young, she mentions this story about how because she was Pentecostal, the other kids at school would make fun and think they were crazy. And because there were a lot of Christians on her block in a normally Catholic area, they called it Dipper's Alley because they baptized with immersion. But it's so wild to think that within this 100 years, there was persecution of Pentecostals. I mean, up until about the 50s, there's stories of some, like, I believe it was Parham, who went to a city and was literally tarred and feathered because the religious people at the time thought it was crazy, thought it wasn't of God. And it wasn't really until the middle of the last century, in the 1950s and 60s, that it really became understood to be mainstream. And that's when, of course, what happened was it just kept growing. But for those in the early days, they tell a very different experience. But one thing that she did is got a bunch of cool autographs from a lot of the ministers that would come by. I posted on YouTube one from Lester Summerall, a little cool autograph of his, and it says, God is love. And she had some others from folks like Donald G. and these others that she would just collect over the years. But it's funny, when they asked her about a Smith Wigglesworth autograph, because she was there in England, this is what she said. The only one I didn't dare ask for an autograph was Smith Wigglesworth, she said. You wouldn't dare ask a man like Mr. Wigglesworth for anything. He stayed at my parents' house several times. He was stern and would always sit bolt upright in a wooden chair. He said the comfy ones caused appendicitis. Doesn't that sound like him? My goodness. Then she talked about some of the revivals and some of the meetings that he had there. She said, he would hold 3-night campaigns in our church and people would flock from everywhere to attend. One lady came with a lump in her breast and she thought she was going to die. Mr. Wigglesworth thumped her so hard we couldn't believe it. But she didn't die. She was healed and lived a long life. I was only a child, but I would watch on and take it all in. How cool is that? There's another story of, you could sort of imagine Wigglesworth getting up there, seeing it, and like he says, he's not hitting the person, he's hitting the devil. And then bam, nails her, but she's healed. It's super awesome. But it's so interesting, and I love hearing about people like this and hearing their lives. And I want you to remember that, your life is not only building this legacy of people you've seen and things that you've done, but when you tell it and share it, even the smallest of details, just like Phyllis, whether she's with the Lord or still hanging out in England somewhere having some tea, is that we could hear this and be encouraged and take joy in it, because the Lord is her Lord, the Lord same as us, he's the Lord of the living, and we're all living. So I wanted to share this with you, some cool insight of Wigglesworth. And remember, she might not preached any big revivals. She was an organist, I guess, which was super cool. And who was it? Donald G., who was the big leader of the Pentecost over there, said that her organ playing was anointing. And that's super great, right? But she didn't have any of these big names. She's not going to have any videos made about her, or never thought she would, maybe until now. But even just the life of being faithful over the years, of growing up, of doing her part, makes this just... these are our joyous family. These is our family for eternity, with the same father and the same big brother. And, hey, remember that you too might be like Mrs. Knight. And you might not need the big thing. You might not need to have any type of big, huge influence that you think is a big influence like other people have. But just like she has just brought this little life and joy to us, you can do that for others. So tell your story and share it. And remember, if you don't want appendicitis, get in a really uncomfortable chair. I'm just kidding. Probably not. Have a comfy chair and make sure you pray in it. I love you. The Lord loves you. We'll see you next time.